Hey, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Wassup Conversations, a podcast with icons of pop culture. I'm your host, Hamid Reza Nikufar, and today I have a superstar warrior as my guest. She's a Grammy-nominated musician, composer, and cellist who has worked on many great projects such as Dune, Inception, Cyberpunk 2077, and Wonder Woman. Hans Zimmer once said that when she grabs the cello, it's like a sword. She becomes the Wonder Woman. My guest is no one but Tina Guo. In this episode, Tina and I talk about her success story, her journey from China to America, her challenging time trying to get a gig, and a music video that changed her life with Hans Zimmer, Brian Tyler, and John Debney asking to work with her. We talked about Tina's spiritual journey with music and some fun questions to know her even more. Before we begin, please consider subscribing to Wassup Conversations if you're enjoying the show. Wassup Conversations is available on YouTube and all the major podcast streaming services. Thank you very much. Let's go. Hello and welcome to Wassup Conversations, Tina. It's such an honor to finally have you on the podcast. And it's weird for me because I feel like I've been working with you for a long time now, since I've been using your amazing cello library with samples like all the time. So in a virtual world, you're my favorite collaborator. So yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So how's it going on? You've been very busy lately. How's the world of touring, and are you enjoying it? Is it tiresome? This must be a huge change in your life, right?
Yeah, all of the above. First of all, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And thank you for using, I call her Robo Guo, like the robot version of me. So thank you for including her in your art. So yes, I was on tour with Hans Zimmer live for almost 3 months until about 2 months ago. So, whenever there's like a period of touring, of course, that's super intense, and that's, of course, fun, but I'm very happy to be back. And then I did go to Australia 2 weeks ago, just for a week, doing a couple concerts, doing Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon live to
Wow.
film. We did, 2 shows in one day in Melbourne, Australia. And then now I've been back. As far as like how everything's going, I'm really trying now. I'm 37 years old now, and I'm very grateful to have been going at it nonstop for like 2 decades. And even before that, because I was playing and performing as a child as well. So now for me as like a human, outside of just music, I'm really trying my best to find a better balance. I think a work-life balance is something probably everybody struggles with, and to just put more energy into that. So I'm trying to like be at home more, working on some different recording projects and stuff. But yeah, just finding that balance.
Yeah, that is great. So before we start talking about your success story, I want to get to know you even more. And to do so, I'm going to ask you some questions that will require your short answers. And by the end of it,
Okay.
psychologically, we will know who Tina is, right?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So we begin.
I'm
It's 10,
scared.
10 questions. No,
Okay.
no, it's fun. All right. So someone is going to make a biographical movie based on your based on your life. Who's the director
Okay.
and who's the composer?
Oh my gosh. You just okay. Hold on. I'm supposed to answer this fast, right?
No,
Um,
no, no, no. You can't give it some thoughts. It's your life.
I
Turn
don't
into
know.
movie.
Is it bad to say, okay, this probably shows that I have a control problem, but is it bad to say I would want to be the director?
Oh, yeah. Why
Um,
not? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Myself, of
And
course,
you've directed
consulting.
some music videos, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Most of my music videos,
Experience.
I have, yeah. And then I would probably ask my dear friend Hans to write the
Ah,
music if
that
he'd
would be
be willing.
great.
And if not, yeah. And if he's not available, also my friend, and we've collaborated a lot, like on my albums and other stuff. He also works with Hans. Steve Mazzaro is
Steve Mazzara
incredible.
is
So
awesome. Yeah.
yes, yes. So I would say Steve too.
So,
Yeah.
are you gonna play the cello for that, or ask someone else?
Uh, I guess it would make sense, right? If it's like myself, sure, why not? Yeah.
All right. So, second question. You're lost in an abandoned island. You could either have your cello or infinite access to Netflix or your streaming service of choice. Weirdly, there's an internet connection. that abandoned
Okay.
one. Yeah.
Okay. Wait, so you're saying there's three choices, right?
No, there's just
Eat,
two choices.
cello. Oh,
Uh,
two choices. Uh-huh.
cello, or you can have like infinite access to Netflix, Amazon, or whatever. You're
Oh my
abandoned
God.
forever
Oh.
there.
Oh, forever.
Forever. There's no hope.
And there's unlimited entertainment, right? That's available to me, but somehow I can't get people to come rescue me. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yeah. Pff, I don't know. I don't think I would do very well, honestly. I know this is not your question. I'm going to answer streaming services, but I don't think I would do very well just being by myself. I'm not. I'm like a very like it's important for me to connect. So I
Yeah.
probably would just lose my mind either way. So maybe it doesn't matter, but um, maybe Netflix, because
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm
Makes
not
sense.
sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, what is the best film score you performed with your cello?
Oh, um, the the one that I enjoyed the most, I have to say, working on Wonder Woman, of course,
Yeah.
was. I mean, it's a dream. It's a dream, and it was amazing as always to work with Hans and to be able to play the electric cello and play it in a style that I think is very very true to myself,
Yeah.
like a badass like
Yeah.
metal type theme. That was incredible. I also really so a friend of mine, his name is Nuno Malo. He's from Portugal, and this was many many years ago, but I just like, I mean, not for some reason. There is a reason because it's beautiful. But the score that he did to a movie called Amalia about the fado singer from Portugal, the theme was with the cello and then, like Portuguese guitar. And it's just so lush and like reminds me of maybe like a Morricone style of
Yeah.
writing. Yeah, yeah. And so that, I like even thinking about it, like that also gives
Wow.
me just like goosebumps. I really, really, really love that soundtrack that he did.
Yeah. Amazing. So,
Yeah.
number 4, you're born again. They say you can't be playing cello in this life. So, what other instrument are you choosing?
If it had to be an instrument, maybe guitar,
Yeah.
maybe like yeah, electric guitar. But I would also actually love an option to like try something completely different, So,
Oh,
but if it was an instrument, it'd be probably guitar. Yeah.
wow. Yeah. So, number 5, you go back in time with your electro cello. To what composer you would go to present this new piece of technology?
Probably Mozart because I think he was
That
very
blew his mind.
experimental. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean he was super
Yeah.
experimental, So I think he'd probably be open to trying stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, we should find
Uh-huh.
electricity back then. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
right. So, um, you could be Wonder Woman, which actually you are, but say the DC superhero Wonder Woman. You could be Wonder Woman for a year and do all sorts of heroic acts, but in return, you could never play the cello again. Would you accept it?
No, no, because that's no,
But you can
no.
save people.
Oh, well, now you're making me feel guilty. Okay, so I can go around and save a bunch of people for a
For a
year.
year. Or, and
Okay.
in return, you can never play it.
Actually, no. I mean, I was more thinking just about like, oh, just flying around or whatever. But no, I mean, if I could actually have powers to make people's lives better and make like a real, I mean, getting completely serious, so like making a huge difference like
Yeah,
that, then yes,
yeah.
of course,
You should give it
because
some
I mean,
thought.
cello's nice. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, cello's nice and everything, but that's like a different
Yeah.
level, I think, of
We should lay
affecting
down the
people's lives.
boundaries there. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, number 7. One composer from any time, dead or alive, could attend your concert. Who do you desire the most?
I think right now because I'm practicing the Haydn cello concerto, so just right now I would say
Wow.
Haydn because I would be so curious to hear like what he thinks of like modern interpretation or even my interpretation if he goes, "Oh, that's interesting," or "That's terrible."
Yeah.
I think I'd just be curious. Yeah.
That's a great choice. Yeah. So, number 8. You have one day to learn a new instrument, which you have no idea about for a concert. Let's say electric hurdy-gurdy. So you
Okay.
you have no internet. What do you do, or who do you gonna call for advice?
Well, somebody that plays that instrument, probably. Can I say that?
Yeah.
And yeah, to give me some tips. Usually, like what I do is I just like look at YouTube, but you said there's no internet,
Yeah.
and try to figure it out. Yeah.
All right. So, what is the most boring musical instrument? Ooh, that's a harsh question.
Oh, that's not. Oh my gosh, your questions are all extremely difficult. I don't even think. I mean, is there such a thing as a boring musical? Okay, how about this? So my dad gave me this. I think it's a South American like percussion instrument.
Uh-huh.
No offense to percussion players, but it's just like a frog, and then you run the wood across the back, and
Oh yeah.
it just makes like. I mean, for me, that's probably
Oh,
the
I know
most
about
boring
that.
instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah, just because it doesn't. That's all they can do, right? I mean, I'm sure you can make
You can sample
cool
frog
rhythms on it.
instead of
Yeah,
using
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, but just in my opinion. Yeah.
All right. So, last question. The phone calls after this podcast and Hans Zimmer is over the line. What kind of a movie would you like him to say is the next project for collaboration?
Kung Fu Panda 4, but that's because
Yeah.
that is the next
Oh,
project that's currently in
awesome.
the yeah,
That
no.
was easy. Amazing.
Yeah.
Now we all feel that we know you better. Some
Thank you.
Yeah, someone can analyze this and figure out what kind of person you are. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So,
I'd be curious to hear. Yeah.
yeah. All right. Let's talk about your amazing journey to success. Please tell me about your childhood, growing up with music. How did you get your first big break to achieve this goddess level of success?
Oh gosh. Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really I don't feel that I'm like at some, but thank you. That's very nice of you to say. I was born in China, in Shanghai. I started playing the piano when I was 3 because both my parents are music teachers. So my mom is a violinist and my dad is a cellist. And they came out, so they had me in China and they had the opportunity to study in America. And at that time, it was during the communist revolution, right after that. So it was really difficult to leave the country, to come to America. And they had the opportunity. So they both went to the United States and left me in China with my grandparents, with my mom's parents. And so they raised me until I was 5. And then I came out to America after, once they had settled in a little bit and were able to, have me there as well. Um, but to be completely honest, and I think sometimes people are like, I don't know if they're shocked by this, because everyone's journey is different. I've met some musician friends who absolutely, they've loved music like organically or their instrument. They saw something on TV, they're like, I want to do that. For me, it was very different. I actually feel like I had no choice. Like, I mean, I didn't have a choice because my parents were uh, the classic Asian tiger parents, right?
Yeah.
And I understand it very much now. I think it's taken me a long time to really like understand, and because the way that I was raised was very extreme, and I'm not the only one. I think a lot of people experience this, maybe immigrant families as well, where your parents are concerned about you just having a future, about trying to get out of like poverty, like difficulties, and being a musician is not an easy thing, right? So basically they forced me to practice, and I started on the violin because my mom is a violinist, and I was terrible. I tried for like 6 months to learn the violin. I remember like even Twinkle Twinkle Little Star was just really bad, and they're like, oh my god, like she has no talent, this is bad. And then I switched over to the cello, and for some reason, maybe just physiologically, like it just was more natural for me, so I did progress a lot faster. But I have to say, I mean, I'm definitely grateful for it now. But if I was not forced to practice like 8 hours a day from the age of 7.5 when I started, I wouldn't have practiced, So I am grateful for it now. But I think my relationship with music, to be honest, it's sometimes like a love-hate relationship, and I don't think maybe some people won't say that publicly, But my new thing is I'm just going to be completely honest and human, and not pretend that everything's perfect all the time and amazing. And I think like it's like a source of so much joy, and I'm gratitude and all the opportunities that I've had, to travel, to play music, to meet amazing people, to work on films. Like it's amazing. But at the same time, and I don't think it's unique to me, it's for everybody, like I think at some point it's like the pressure, there is a lot of pressure, like stress that comes from it, feeling like I have to it's never enough. Like, oh my God, I have to like do more. I have to do more. And it becomes like the cycle. But I think, I mean, that's maybe not even cello related. I think that's just any career, especially as a freelance or creative person. So that's like kind of my entire, I think, relationship around music. Um, and oh my gosh, I mean, your question is like very overarching,
No,
right?
no, no.
So
That's
like my big, yeah, like my big break. I it's not. I don't really feel like there was one specific big thing. Like it was like just like years and years of like I mentioned from the time I was a child, 8 hours a day. Again, not because I wanted to. That's the difference because I've met some people who wanted to, but because I had to. I was forced to, with any means necessary. And I think that's why it was like something I like sometimes hated, sometimes, oh, I feel good. I'm good at something, so this like really weird feeling. But it was just like so much work. It was always like work and like this type of pressure that was on me. Um, so yeah, and like when people are like, "Oh yeah, what was like the big thing?" I was like, "Oh my God, it feels like it was just, you know, so many days, years, decades of like, trying to get better at something, so better at the cello so that I could make a living." It was started off very simple. I wasn't like, "Oh, I want to be famous," or I was like, "I just need to figure out a way to make enough money to buy groceries and to pay rent." Like it started very, very base level. And then I think as time went on, I came here to Los Angeles. I went to USC because that was the only way I was going to go to college. Was that I was offered, thankfully, a full scholarship to a few different schools because my parents forced me to practice so much. So I was, technically, I guess, like good, good in comparison to maybe other people at my age, for playing the cello. So I came to LA, and somehow I think everybody gets involved into the film business or video game business if you happen to be here. I just think it just kind of happens, right? It's so, and so I started working a little bit on different projects, and I met, student composers. Um, but that's also when I discovered the electric cello, because I was like, oh my God, what is this? This is something that's, because I was really, really into like dark music, gothic music, metal music, probably because it was something I wasn't allowed to listen to. And my parents were very like, be classical, Haydn, Mozart, like that's what you have to do. You graduate from college, you audition for orchestra, you're going to be in an orchestra, have a steady job. And so I think I was just trying to find ways to like break out. And I was very, very curious about that type of music. So that's when I started experimenting with electric cello. And I think in that, I found some source of like freedom because I'm like, oh, this is like my own thing. I can do whatever I want. I wasn't very good at it, but like, I can just experiment and like discover different types of music. So then I started experimenting with that, but it was a lot of years. I think I was in LA for maybe 7 years, 6, 7 years of like, grinding. I was in school, trying to work, trying to do gigs, trying to like just find ways to make money. And like the maybe the big turning point, I at that time, it was, oh my gosh, how old was I think I've been in LA for a while. I had left school, because it was too difficult to balance trying to work. I was doing some small concerts, and then I would leave for like 2 weeks. At that time I was doing a lot of classical stuff, so for some reason I would go to Mexico a lot. So I would play with like the Mexico National Symphony and some other orchestras down there, and then I would go to Italy. It was like very like specific regions that I would go. And of course I want to perform, but more importantly, like I need to make money because like I had a scholarship for tuition, but it didn't cover food, board, and I already had loans out. And so it was always this pressure of like, oh my God, what am I going to do to like survive? So because I left so often, obviously I had no idea what was going on in my classes. I would just not be there for 2 weeks, and then I come back like, I don't know what's happening. So my grades started going down. Like the only thing that I got A's in was cello performance. Anything that was playing related was good, but everything else, like I just wasn't there, and I had to like practice, and I was focusing on other stuff. Um, so for that reason, and also my cello professor, Eleanor Schoenfeld, she also passed away. So that was a huge part of it. So that was the reason I was there. So I was at USC for 2.5 years, but it got to the point where like I couldn't balance everything anymore. So it was either I continue and finish college or I continue working. And like I felt like my career was already, there were some small opportunities, but you have to seize, I feel like you really have to seize every opportunity. So I made that choice to leave, but I will tell you, after I left, it was really hard. I mean, I was doing like I remember like like any gig I could find on Craigslist, like online. I was like desperate. I was like posting like I was playing at so many a lot of weddings, funerals, more funerals than weddings. For some
Wow.
reason, that's like a cello, bar mitzvahs, just random parties, like literally anything. And then I was playing with like different singer songwriters, bands. I would write cellist for hire. We'll play anything, and I would do like a show, like rehearsal show. Like multiple sound check for like $50, right? Which wouldn't even cover the gas money and parking and stuff. But I was just so like grinding and grinding and grinding for so many years. And then it was like 6 years after that, six. So it didn't happen immediately. 6 years. I woke up one day. I was living in a garage, not a full garage, half of a garage. I was renting because I couldn't afford, so I was renting this half of a garage, with no air conditioning, no heat. Like it did have a bathroom, like they put in stuff. There was no stove. Like it was just not a glamorous thing, right? And I thought, you know what? Maybe my dreams of being like an electric cello player is a little unrealistic. Maybe I should just, I don't know, audition for an orchestra, which is not a bad thing, but like just do what is like, 'cause what else can I do? Like all I did growing up was play cello. I'm like, I don't even know what else I would do. Um, so I had reached that point, and then I think a lot of people, and also my parents, just because of their experience, they're from the classical world. They're like, "What are you doing? Are you crazy? Like you left school and all this stuff. Like you should just go back to doing what you should do." And I thought, okay, so before I completely give up on my crazy dreams, like I'm gonna make a music video because there's this new thing called YouTube, and this was in 2009, I think. And so YouTube had been out for a little bit, maybe a couple years, but it was still very new. And I'm like, I'm gonna spend every penny I have, which was not very much that I had in my bank account, like everything I can to try to make a music video of like me playing the electric cello in a metal style. Because at that time, I just had these weird, crazy ideas, but nobody was interested, right? And I would tell them like, "Oh, I could play electric cello, kind of like a guitar player," and I felt like the reaction was like, "Oh, that's nice. Okay, whatever." So I'm like, "All right, I'm just gonna throw everything against it and make this for myself, just so I wasn't even thinking it would like something would happen. I would just do it for my own whatever, and before I do something else, right, and give up." And that was when I made the Queen Bee music video. And it wouldn't have been, I mean, I pulled so many favors, and I'm like so grateful, of course, like every day for the friends and the people that like took pity on me, like, "Oh, sure, you can, you know, Johnny, a coffin case." It's like a guitar case company that makes cases in the shape of coffins. It's like a gothic company. So I knew the owner, and I said, "Is there any way, like, I'm just looking for a location?" And he was so kind to let me shoot there for free. It was just like I had friends who literally, like, I couldn't afford to like feed, the people that were working on it. And some friends came and like brought like food, and it was just, and like the band members who were in the video, like, I think most of them did it for free. I mean, it was just like, I'm like, oh my God, like I'm just really, I'll like pay you back one day. And also all of this stuff, it took about 6 months. I remember it was like half a year to try to put together this video. And then, so we did it, we edited it, and I put it out. And a little part of me was like, oh, maybe like Metallica or somebody will see it and then
Yeah.
they'll invite me to play with them. Or I didn't know how life worked. I just thought like, okay, that's what happens. And suddenly you become famous and then you go on tour and then like, everything's solved. That is not what happened. So I think it was 2 weeks after the video came out, I didn't get any calls from any metal people whatsoever. So, but life works in a funny way, right? I got a call from Brian Tyler, from John
Wow.
Debney, and from Hans, right? And like I think it just like spread, because I remember I was posting on Facebook. I was desperate. Like I was just like constantly posting stuff, trying to like, oh my God, if I don't help myself, no one's gonna help me, because it's
Yeah.
hard. And so I was very lucky that they either found it or somebody showed it to them, like this particular video, because it was very extreme. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's like a heavy metal version of the Flight of the Bumblebee. But it's like, it's not original, but I think it was just maybe the way that I did it, and artistically it was very extreme. I mean, it's rated 18 and over. It's not pornographic or anything, but it's just, it's artistic, and it's really what was true to me at that time. I think it was fueled by this angst of like, oh my God, what am I doing? I'm failing. Like, this is not working. And maybe I'm crazy. So all of these like tortured ideas, like around an instrument that I already had a love-hate relationship with. So it's like, I felt like I was like forced into this life that I had no choice. And then, oh my God, what am I going to do now? So I think maybe that energy where there's like so much, like sometimes people say like, oh, you play with so much like aggression, or like, because it's real. It's like this, like, not to sound like a tortured artist, but like it sounds cheesy, but like I'm not, it's like I don't want to be, but it's like there's a lot of these like mix of feelings that I think I'm thankfully able to channel through the instrument. So it's like it's like a way to like release stuff, you know? Some people go to therapy, some people scream and kick things, and I'm like, I guess I can do it through this. Um, so yeah, anyway, I released that, and then John invited me to come like just improvise over the score of Iron Man 2, like certain parts, and that was in like the I think it ended up I don't know if it was in the actual movie, but it was in the soundtrack, so we did some of that. And then with Brian, I think I forgot like what we even worked on. Sorry, Brian, I like don't remember what the movie was, but he invited me in to do some electric cello stuff. And then from Hans's office, and at the time, like he knows this, I wasn't focused on trying to play film music. So I like didn't know who any of these people were. I really had no idea, you know? And so when his office called me, they're like, can you come in? We're interested in having you work with Hans. I'm like, well, okay, I guess, sure. Like I want to work. And they were working on Sherlock Holmes. So that was, I feel like that in my relationship with Hans has been a huge part, I think, of my career, of my life, my career, and then also the direction in which I've gone, which I think is predominantly focused in soundtrack music. So that was a really, really big part of it. And then, sorry, I keep going back and forth. I don't want to like not mention my friend Austin Wintory because Austin has known me since college, right? And at that time, the Journey soundtrack, we had actually, I think we had recorded it even before this happened. So it was on the classical cello, and it was, at that time nobody knew if it was going to work. It was like a very small game by an indie game company. So and later that ended up being very successful, but it took a long time for it to come out because it was, so it was like all during that time, I think the seeds that were planted. But if I if I had to name like what was the big break, probably that video and like people seeing it, and then that also led to. Sorry, I talk too much, but that also led to the Cirque du Soleil calling me, and so I did join the Cirque du Soleil for 2 years, and that was like a big part of I think my development as well. And they called me because they saw my YouTube videos. Okay, that was my
Yeah.
way long answer to your question.
it was
Sorry.
it was so inspiring and so revealing. I mean, what's great about it is that throughout those years that you were grinding, you were kind of like, okay, I'm learning this. I know I'm good, but nothing is happening, and that's I think a great lesson here is that the moment you decided that, all right, I'm in a good position, I know these things, but like many people, you were just waiting for something to happen to you, which rarely does happen. But you made a
Yeah.
move, you made it possible with that video. So a lot of time people think, oh, that was luck, someone saw that. But
Mhm.
it wasn't luck. You actually did something and you were great at it. And what's great about this story is that, speaking about this love hate relationship that you had, I think at one point in your life, this was something that, hey, you have to do this, you have to learn this. It was
Yeah.
something that, and deep inside, you were feeling something different, and that came out through something that was kind of like given to you. And that is the point, that break point, that light that comes out of this make it different. So what you achieved in life is really inspiring, because before you earned that many superstar cellists in the world, I mean, the course, of course there are like great cello players, but you kind of fuse your musical art with the superstar persona that I have never seen before. So this is
Oh,
something that came out of you. I think this is the real Tina that we see. And when you play that instrument, you are something different that we've never seen before. And that is something different that I guess you never seen before in your life either. So did you plan this in advance, or to create this iconic figure that is not only a cello player but a character as well? Because a lot of people don't know about music or film music or something, but when they see you, like, oh, I know her. Oh, yeah, this is huge. So this is something unique that wasn't before. So was
yeah.
this something planned, or the naturally came
No,
to you?
no, no. I feel like it's just, so say like an alter ego or something, but I
Yeah,
think it's exactly what you
yeah,
said. It's that feeling of like repression, frustration.
yeah.
Sometimes I joke I would have either done that or become a serial killer. I mean, it's like so much like pent up, and then somehow it just manifested as whatever. So it wasn't planned. It wasn't like, oh, I'm gonna do this and do that. It was just doing whatever I felt. But the thing is, I did pivot a lot, you know. So if something I also I had so many bands. I think at least four band projects that all failed,
Yeah.
and nobody knows about them because they failed. So I do think, because I don't want to tell people like, do the thing that you want to do
Yeah.
and just never give up, because sometimes things don't work, and then you don't want to put like so much, because I made the video because I was actually ready to give up, right? So okay, so
Yeah.
that ended up working out, but before that I had four other band projects that I really put a lot of energy into. I was like, oh, this is going to be the metal band or the rock band, or that's going to, and it just didn't work. And I did stop. I did give up technically on that. I stopped. I'm like, okay, this is not working. I'm gonna try this. Okay, this is not working. Okay, I'm gonna try this. And then after all these group projects didn't work, I thought to myself, maybe it's better I work solo, because then you don't have arguments about, oh my gosh, everything from the
Yeah.
music to the business. I mean, I'm sure everybody knows it's hard to collaborate. And so yes, I do. I always am careful to say, like, don't be too like, yes, you have to be focused, but also be flexible, I think, in the approach, because if you're too stiff, like it's like a branch, right? Like the Chinese proverb, you'll snap like as soon as there's a storm. You have to be like kind of flexible and soft, but still have a general direction. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, a lot of people love something. They're passionate about it. Their whole life they were dreaming to do this. But once they do
Yeah.
it, like, doesn't feel that exciting. And you kind of had it. So I think at one point you were just doing it for survival, right? So this is the only thing I
Yes.
know, so I should do it. But at one
Yeah.
point, that music video, that performance, kind of like
Yeah.
was something different. I mean, I guess we're all looking for that to find our true self there. But
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
beginning, the big this when we begin this journey, it's all the same. We all look like each other, but at the end we
Yeah.
change. So
Yeah.
congratulations, you found it.
Oh,
So
thank
yeah,
you.
it's
Thank
it's
you.
it's fascinating how music show us the true and honest version of ourselves, especially when we're composing and performing with heart. I think when we
Yeah.
give too much thinking to it, that we make this collage of other musicians that we have heard in our lives. But when we reach down to any emotion that we have, it comes out something different, and it becomes healing. So,
Yeah.
tell me about your emotional journey when you were writing and performing a piece. How has music shown you your true self, and how is it possibly curing yourself?
Okay, so a lot of the music that I write, and I started writing music from a younger age as well. Um, I remember like people would tell me, or even not just writing, but even the way I would play, say, even classical music. I remember one thing that the conductor of the Mexico National Symphony told me, and at the time I think I was maybe 19 or 20, so I was pretty young. And he was like, he looked at me, he's like, why do you play with so much pain? Like it's like you
Wow.
suffered so much already, you know? Um, so I feel like I've always kind of like gravitated towards like sad, or like I don't know, there's like that tortured feeling, but I think I know where it comes from. It's because of like my relationship with music, right? And so it's really weird. It's like I can't even separate myself from it, because I don't even like, this is something I'm like kind of like going through now at almost 40 years old, that like now I'm actually, because I'm so grateful, and for you to say like, oh, like the things I've achieved, like sometimes I feel like, imposter syndrome. Like you say this to me and like other people, and sometimes I'm like, really? Like that's me? Like I don't feel like that all the time. Like I don't really feel like, yeah, I wake up and I'm like everybody else. I'm like, oh my God, what am I gonna do today? Like what am I, I don't think that ever goes away. It's always
Yeah,
there.
that's natural.
On some level. Yeah, unless you're like a egomaniac or something, maybe then you're like, oh, I'm
You're
great.
healthy.
Um, yeah, like maybe so. And so like what does music reveal about me? I think it's weird because like my relationship with music has also shaped me as a person and how I feel about it. So it is like this like little like tornado that I can't separate. So like I don't know. Yeah, I've also played music that's like happy, but I think for a very long time all of my stuff that came out of me was like very a lot of like, you could call it passion, because it's passion, but it's also like it can be like a negatively fueled passion as well, like frustration, or like really desperately wanting something, or yeah, maybe it is passion, I don't know, like or longing for some longing, I think is a good word,
Yeah.
and trying to like find something, trying to find myself, and then somehow how I'm expressing it ends up being like a part of that. It's hard. I think it's hard to say in words, but like you said, when you see or you hear a musician and they're playing that, like words aren't even needed. Like you, it's like a direct into your like soul, your heart. You're like, oh, like that's what's inside them, you know? So I don't even know if I can like kind of like say what it is that I feel, but I do when I'm in the flow, when I am performing and in those moments where I feel like connected, like my brain stops. You know, you're right about that. And I think in normal life, like off stage, I definitely overthink. I think a lot. I'm like super analytical to the point where it's too much. And then so like I think being in the flow in music when I'm making music with people, if I'm, recording stuff for a project, or like when I do get into the flow states, it is freeing because I'm able to turn it off and only like channel, or focus on the music.
Yeah. So, do you, when you're performing a film score on the stage, you also think
Uh-huh.
about the story of that movie or the character at the moments of the film?
Uh-huh. No, I mean, I know generally, of course, what the film is, but for me, it's more about capturing like the essence, right? So, for example, Pirates of the Caribbean. Okay, I'm gonna do it in my way because I'm not a pirate and I'm not a white pirate male, It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
who's drunk all the time. 'Cause I've never even been drunk. Like I don't drink at all. So it's not about that. You don't have to be like exactly. I think it's not about that because then it becomes very literal. It's like if you're like too literal, then it's like oh, it's like but I think for me, I just try to capture like what is the feeling of this. So it's like power, adventure. Like he also is longing. Everybody's longing. That's the human condition. We're always like wanting more to feel special, to have your purpose, whatever, like all of this stuff. And okay, like longing, desire, power, violence, maybe, aggression. And so I just try to like and I think if you've felt those things before, it's easier because you're not pretending, it's authentic. Like, so I'm like, okay, I've definitely felt all those things before, you know, and then I just try to like feel it. It's not mental at all. It's like a physical thing. I feel it and then I play it. Of course, I always say like when you're practicing music, that's like the analytical part where like, oh, how do
Yeah.
I play the notes?
Yeah.
And to, make sure it's in your body so much that you don't have to even think about it when you're on stage. Because if I'm on stage, and this has happened before where I didn't practice enough, and I'm like, oh shit, like what's next? Oh my God, like I can't remember, like, or oh no, am I gonna hit that note? Is it gonna be out of tune? Like that completely takes you out of
Yeah.
everything. And then you're just like in your head. But if you've practiced enough, you've done it enough times. And I think, with this example, like with Hans Zimmer Live, I've been doing it for so many years. I've played it hundreds of times, and practiced it and played it. So now it's actually become, I feel like it's like a part of me, so I can just do like I remember before the last tour, we were doing the first rehearsal and I hadn't actually like reviewed it at all. And I was like, oh no, like what if I forgot? It's a really long piece. Like I haven't even like thought about it since the last tour. And then I started playing it and it like it was already there. It just still is like inside my body. So I think that's what I mean by like being prepared analytically, on like a technician side. That's separate from like the art, I think, and expression. Those are two completely different things. And yeah, I don't even remember what your question was.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop
But yeah,
talking.
yeah. To continue that, do you have any routine or maybe meditation before playing?
Nowadays, like I do need to stretch, and I cannot emphasize this enough because if you've seen like the
Yeah.
way that like I perform, even if people aren't performing as violently or moving, like it is hard on your body. But when I was younger, maybe I was too lazy, or like you feel good when you're in your 20s and oh, it's no problem. But like now,
Yeah.
because of all the
Oh my
years of
god.
playing, like no, it's led to
I've
some
seen
like
some
issues. Like
pictures
I
of
have
you. Some violent
no,
pictures.
no,
Oh my god.
no, yeah, no, no. There's a price to pay for it.
Yeah.
It's like so, like my neck, my
Oh my
back. Like
god.
I'm just,
Yeah.
it's a problem. So as I get older, so now I have to tell myself because I want to just like, okay, I'm just gonna start doing something. Like, no, Tina, stop. You have to stretch. I like watch some YouTube videos and I
Yeah.
like kind of go along with that. And I try to so that actually it's more of like a physical maintenance of my body. Getting massages. It's not so much like a mental thing because for me, practice maybe because I was trained from a young age. It's like I was trained from age 3.5 or 5 to like practice in a more because it was something I didn't want to do. So it wasn't about art. I'm not sitting down and like oh, let me just, like play. I don't know. It's not like that for me, unfortunately. I wish it was, but for me, it's more like, okay, Tina, you play the cello. You don't want to start backsliding and suck and lose all your skills. So you have to practice. And then like right now, I'm preparing for some upcoming concerts. So thankfully I have specific stuff I need to practice. So then I just sit down and I analyze it. So I'm like, okay, this page, this thing and this thing and this thing, I don't feel totally comfortable with. Sometimes I miss the notes. Okay, I'm just going to sit here and practice that. And then once I get into it, then I get into it because I'm just like, because it feels good when you're like, oh, like I can play it in tune now, or oh, like I learned this new
Yeah.
fingering. But it's actually very methodical. So it's like, yes, stretching, trying to get myself into the right mindset, having coffee. I drink too much coffee. Having coffee, water, and then taking, here's my dog Pizza.
Amazing
She,
name.
yeah, taking little breaks to go for a walk. So yeah, I don't know if I guess that's a routine, like trying to find some balance and make sure, you know, I'm not like breaking myself, just like not
Yeah.
preparing and taking breaks. Yeah.
Yeah. So we talked about the importance of emotion and humanity to make something special. With the rapid
Yeah.
evolution of AI, how do you see the future of music?
I think that it's going to make organic things more special. Maybe that's an idealistic way of thinking of it, but it's just same thing with like real relationships between people. Because so much like that's happened to me. So I will tell. Okay, this is perfect. So I'm going to tell you. So even right before COVID, like so there's what 4 or 5 years ago, I genuinely believed this. I would like, I would joke around and say my nickname is like Robo Glow. I'm a robot. I'm plugged into the mothership. I'm either playing the cello or I'm on my computer, looking at like I'm also very passionate, about finance and like, saving money, like all this other stuff. So I'm like looking at my spreadsheets, I'm looking at my stocks, I'm looking at social media, I'm analyzing. I want to have this much more followers on Facebook, Instagram. I mean, now I'm like, oh my God, that's exhausting. But
Yeah.
it was like nonstop like that for as long as just because I was so, I think, focused on that. And my relationships, like with even with friends, with partners, like to be honest, like they really suffered because and maybe, some people are like, oh, well, you have to do that, at some point to get yourself to put where you put everything into your career, which, okay, I guess that's what I did. But it really suffered because like, I remember even saying like I can't spend too much time with friends because it's a waste of time. It's like a waste of my energy, a waste like that's really how I felt. And that's well now I in my opinion, I'm like that's the opposite. That's like the opposite because like as we get older, not to go off on a tangent and talk about things like, but if talking about music, and music is part of being human and we're all humans, right? So what I've learned, is like, yes, you do have to like spend that time. I think in your 20s, like, yes, okay, go crazy, obsess over your work, maybe let other things suffer a little bit if that's what the situation is. Um, but now, like as I've gotten older, and maybe because I have achieved some things that like I feel a little bit more not yeah, I feel a little bit more settled and confident in myself. I'm like, okay, like no one looks at me anymore and goes, electric cello, what are you talking about? So at least there's not that. So I'm like, okay, I've proved something. Like I do feel like I've finally, I don't know when it happened, but I'm like, okay, I feel like I've like proven something. No one tells me I'm stupid anymore for having crazy ideas because people would say they're like, you're ridiculous. Like, don't, that's crazy. Like, what are you talking about? But I think after that happened, and now that I've gotten older, and maybe after COVID and all of these things, it's like I'm more focused on like what you said about human aspect. I'm like, oh my God, that is so important. And I almost feel like I never had a chance to really explore that. Because even as a child, like I really almost spent no time hanging out with friends because I wasn't allowed to do anything. I had to practice all the time. Like, think about it, 8 hours a day. How are you going to sleep, eat, do homework, go to school, and practice 8 hours? Like, it's just not like there's no time for anything. So now, like, I really because of like, my relationship with music, like I've mentioned, like I think I reached a point where I was burned out. I actually like worked so hard that I got to a point where I'm like, I'm exhausted. Like I'm exhausted just being so obsessed with my career and like getting all of my self-worth from that, and I think that happens to people. I know it does, like in their career. And if anything, like if I feel like I was like this, and if I feel like it kind of stops, or it's like, because things ebb I would feel so bad about myself. Like really, I would be like, oh, I'm a loser. Oh, like I'm never gonna get called again for a gig. And like I want to say this openly because I think sometimes people like look at, me or and they're like, oh, it's perfect. She's like, no, that's not the
Yeah.
case. We're all human, and it would make me feel so bad because I'm a very emotional person. I'm like dramatic,
Yeah.
not because I'm pretending, just because I am. And I would feel like, oh, like all of these ups and downs. And I realized I don't want to feel like that. Like I want, like what you said about the cello and the Netflix, I was like, like on an island, it's like if something happened, knock on wood, or whatever, and I stopped playing the cello or I stopped doing music, who am I? Like, do I still have
Yeah.
value? Will anybody still care about me? Like, does anybody love me for like me as a human? Like, who am I as a human? Like, all of these things really happen. I think in the last like 5 years, maybe because of my age, maybe because of COVID, like everything stopping. And you're like, oh my God, what am I doing? Like, is this the end of the world? Like, where are my friends? Like, who actually cares to like, and so as far as like the human element in music, and I think maybe even more so because I'm more aware of that, that affects, of course, the way that I play now too. So I feel like even playing, practicing the cello concerto that I'm working on, I feel like I play it very differently now because it's more sensitive. I think it's not as like brazen. One thing that I was told before is that I play classical cello the same way I play electric. It's like very like, which is okay sometimes if you're playing Shostakovich, but if you're, I mean, and I would like argue, no, you should play it however you want because everybody's different. I'm like defensive, right? And then now, because I'm different, I'm like, maybe this isn't supposed to be played like that. Maybe not everything
Yeah.
has to be so aggressive and like, and so it has reflected in, I think, in the way that I play. So right now, like you've caught me in a period where I'm really like, it's not a midlife crisis or third life crisis. It's not that, but it's really like, who am I? Like, what am I doing? It's
Yeah.
like I was set on this trajectory where I didn't have a choice. It's almost like I just have to do it and figure it out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess for me, that's my human experience mixed with my music and art.
Do you have any solo projects on the horizon?
Okay, so that's so I had released so many albums, right? Like before I was signed to Sony, I think I released 10 or 11 albums and multiple singles on top. Because again, I was a robot, obsessed. Like
Yeah.
I have to release stuff, all that, and not even like the quality necessarily. I was just like, I mean, I'm not saying I don't like all of it, but some of the stuff I was just like, I have to keep going. I have to keep going. I have to like this obsessive thing. And then I signed with Sony, and then I did two albums with them and a lot of singles, and it was a good relationship. But it got to the point, it was during COVID, where I was saying to them, like, I think I want to try something experimental. I think I want to try like, and understandably, because it's a business and it's a label, they, like any label, were like, oh, that seems a little weird. I don't think that's going to work. And so I thought, you know what? I've gotten to this point where it's easy to release music by yourself, And so I said, okay, I'm gonna leave, on good terms. Like they let me out of my contract. So now I'm back to being self releasing my own label. I've released a couple of collaborations, a couple of singles like since then. So like Last Samurai, a classical piece, Salute d'Amour, and I did a like Metallica. Like I've done some stuff, but like I was also like, who am I now? Not that I'm not the electric cello Tina, it's there, but I'm like, what do I want to do now? So there was some confusion about that, and I thought like I love tribal music. I'm like, it's something that I like to
Wow.
listen to. So I do have. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this project called the Water Phoenix, and it's my imagination, my imagined idea of what prehistoric China, so before China was China, so literally like caveman ages, of what music from that region would sound like, because obviously nobody knows. Um, so I have a single that's ready. It's mastered. I
Wow.
haven't released it because I'm trying to figure out right now, like how it's like, how do I release it? I want to make an epic music video for it, but I'm not on a label anymore. So then I'm thinking, oh God, like the cost, because you have to think about that stuff. Oh,
Yeah.
it's going to cost like a lot to make a good video. And yeah, I do feel like people expect a certain level from me. So I'm like, oh, if I'm going to do something, like I need to like, and I don't know. I think like when I'm not, maybe people are different, or maybe some people can understand who are listening to this, or maybe you can understand. Like I think for so long, like I mentioned, I was driven by like something where I'm like trying to prove something, and now that I'm kind of past that, and my entire existence is not just about my career. It's not. It really used to be. So now I'm like kind of more. I'm still working. I love working on stuff, but I'm not as like I have to release something like every week or I'm a loser. No, it's so yes, like that is kind of like what I'm figuring out right now. And I told myself like yesterday, I'm like, maybe I should just make the plan and just do it, and not think like, is it going to work? Because I really think, is it going to work? Is it going to go viral? Like, not to talk down about myself, but I don't, probably not, because it's something that's so like weird and niche. It really would be for myself, just to do something different. So I hope that answers your question as far as like a
Exactly.
solo thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
So last question. Do you have any advice for girls around the world who would need inspiration, especially from a successful woman like you? Yeah.
I think it's really important to have faith in yourself, right? Because in the very beginning, like I mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of people won't understand what you're thinking or what your
Yeah.
desires are. You do have to prove it, but you prove it not by talking about it. Like, you do have to find a way to do it, and then, but don't be afraid. Also, say you do something and then you realize, ah, like from yourself, like, I don't think this is working, like me and my all the other bands, then you can pivot. But I think to give all of yourself into something, and also to try to educate yourself on the other aspects of, for example, if you're doing music, try to learn a little bit about contracts and the business side of things, because if you always depend on someone else, it's going to be really difficult to do anything at all, so like, people ask me like, how did you learn how to produce, record, mix? I'm not saying I'm even good at any of these things. I just kind of did it because I didn't have a choice. I couldn't afford to hire anybody. But I think it's actually a good thing to know a little bit, at least, about all of these things so that you can be self-sufficient. And I think the bigger picture is like, yeah, nowadays everybody's about like, female empowerment and like self-sufficiency. And I do think that's important, and to yeah, but I really feel like nowadays, like, that's such a big message that I hope that there's no like girls out there who are not feeling like more empowered, and supported by society in general.
Yeah, that's a great advice. Yeah. Thank you so much. Your art has given us so many emotions throughout the years. Your fierce, ambitious, and free soul is inspiring, and talking to you was an absolute honor. Thank you so much, Tina.
Oh, thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.